Jets are in a very, very, very interesting position coming up here in the 2022 NFL season. Obviously, Robert Saleh's second season as the head coach. Now, things didn't go how they had planned last year, especially with Zach Wilson. They had a lot of high expectations for him. Then he got injured for a stretch. You can see some of the traits as to why they like Zach Wilson, but I mean, the jury's still kind of out on him here. But you know what? Robert Saleh, his background as a former defensive coordinator, it kind of appears evident in this mock draft that is run here, Pro Football Network. Round 1, pick number 4, Kayvon Thibodeaux, edge rusher out of Oregon. Now, I know that there were some reports that talked about whether or not he has the fire to be a football player, whether he was more concerned about the bright lights, things like that. But I can tell you this, people I've spoken to, and even talking with former Oregon Ducks head coach Mario Cristobal, he loves Kayvon Thibodeaux, and he had nothing but high praise for him, kind of challenging some of the narratives I know that have been put out there in terms of the media, which this is usually sometimes what happens with NFL teams. Part of me is wondering if the Jets are one of these teams that have been kind of putting stuff like that out to maybe drop the value so he can get there, because obviously everyone's talking about Aiden Hutchinson being the first edge rusher off the board. You can make the argument that Kayvon Thibodeaux is probably going to be the second guy there. What could have been even David Ojabo before he tore his Achilles, but now the Jets here, they take him with the 4th overall pick. I like this pick personally.
I like it too. He's my edge 1 still. I'm sticking with it. I look at the tape and, one thing I never want to do as a draft evaluator, everyone has a limited perspective. There's only so much you can know and see. And especially with the guy's character, every day, even people that you talk to and work to, you see very little of their character, right? And it's one of those things, looking at Kayvon Thibodeaux, a draft prospect who no one really has the inside scoop on this guy. No one knows him personally, so it's one of those things where I don't want to jump to conclusions and say whether or not he loves football. I do know this. On tape, I think his motor is good. I think there are some times when plays wane, when he's kind of out of the play already, where it dies off. But again, as a pass rusher, when he's coming downhill, he brings a lot of heat. And I think the best thing about that too is that he has very good athletic traits, very good physical traits. You look at the explosiveness, to me, rare explosiveness. He gets off with a ton of heat, covers a ton of ground with that first step, effortlessly too. I mean, it's like it's not even a strain for the guy. But then on top of that, very good length, over 33-inch arms, and he can leverage that burst and that length into immense power capacity at the point of attack, get inside the tackle's torso and just drive them back. His bend isn't elite. That's one of the knocks that I had on tape. He does struggle. Sometimes his hips lock up at the apex. But again, I think it's good enough. He does a pretty good job of lowering himself, shrinking his surface area a little bit. I think if he improves his hand usage and timing, then he can improve that, winning around the edge at the next level. But bottom line, you have the explosiveness and the length to build off of. And he's shown, too, that he has an awareness of how to set up tackles with preliminary moves and then kind of dip under them. So he has that understanding of the chess match that is edge rusher versus tackle. So that combined with the physical upside is enough for me to take him at 4.
See, that was one of the things during the NFL Combine. It was when Kayvon Thibodeaux didn't necessarily want to do all these different drills, and all of a sudden it's, what is his competitive toughness? He doesn't care. Why are we making all these assumptions about a player? Yeah. Let him be the one to drive that narrative. I get so sick of hearing that kind of stuff about this guy doesn't care, doesn't want to play. I'm like, stop it. I don't get it. Like you said, Cody, maybe it's just smoke screen for trying to drive down his price tag potentially in the draft. Maybe someone try to get a value on him. But I feel like at this point, NFL scouts aren't throwing away all that game tape just based on what the narrative is being pushed out. We see how disruptive he was playing alongside Noah Sewell up there in Oregon, one of the best 1-2 pairings in college football for the last couple of years. I don't get that. Another guy that everyone keeps kind of pushing down their boards, and if you see these mock drafts, people saying, no, we don't want him. I don't necessarily get why. And with their next first-round pick sitting here at number 10, Kyle Hamilton, the safety out of Notre Dame. We want a rangy guy, you got him. You want someone to play down in the box and lay the lumber, he can do the exact same thing. Tell me how this would be such a great fit inside of this Robert Saleh style defense.
Yeah, and I'll preface with this, and me and Ali released a podcast that you can listen to. We went over the safeties and talked about Kyle Hamilton relative to other candidates as well. I don't think Hamilton is a flawless prospect. That said, I do still have him as a top 5 guy on my board. I think we need to find that balance where guys aren't untouchable, but we have to be honest about what they provide. I think Kyle Hamilton, everyone was talking about the 40 time, and I don't think he has elite long speed.
Well, he ran a 47-yard 40, for being honest.
Exactly. That's one thing. And another thing is I think explosiveness is much more valuable for safeties than long speed, because rarely are you covering the entire field. A lot of too high looks, and especially with the Jets signing Jordan Whitehead, that's something that I think Kyle Hamilton will find himself in a lot. Those too high, he can be used as a big slot too. He has that versatility, has enough fluidity and agility to cover guys, especially tight ends. He can blanket them. He's got that size where he can be a mismatch for smaller receivers too. So I think, largely if you're playing in those quarters and those halves, he has the explosiveness. I mean, this guy gears up super quickly on tape for a 6'4", 220-pound guy. He's very intelligent, very good processing, reacts quickly and adapts quickly, which is very important for the safety position. Again, not a flawless prospect because I don't think the long speed is elite. I don't think the fluidity is necessarily elite, but it's not enough for me to say, oh, drop him outside of the top 10. If he's there at the top 10, you get a highly versatile safety prospect with very good intelligence, extremely high level explosiveness, which is very important. You look at a guy like Justin Simmons in Denver, he ran a 4.61, very explosive, very intelligent, and he's become a very good player in the NFL. So I think Kyle Hamilton can have a similar career arc. He has that big slot versatility too that I would want. So I think that really helps your secondary take the next step.
Kyle Hamilton, too, would be a great guy for Robert Saleh. He'd be a Robert Saleh guy. Like, if you had Kayvon Thibodeau, Kyle Hamilton, that's ridiculous defensive value right there. In a tough division that is going to require you to have really good safety play and also some edge rusher play, considering you're going to be playing against the Josh Allens, Tua Tagovailoa, and even the Mac Joneses of the division. You're going to have to find a way to get pressure on those guys and get takeaways against those guys, which those two guys increase the likelihood of that here. But let's talk about their round 2 pick here at number 35, Jameson Williams, wide receiver out of Alabama. Now, more than likely, they won't get to experience the Jameson Williams show this season, maybe towards the end of the season. And if they find themselves somehow magically right now in the optics of a playoff conversation, maybe then. But ideally, this is an investment for the future because he could legitimately become a wide receiver 1 for this football team. Maybe not right away, but that's where his potential is, and that's something the Jets need.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the impact that he could have on a young quarterback in Zach Wilson. I think not just the impact that Jameson Williams himself can make independently with his speed, obviously being able to get open quickly, especially downfield. We know Zach Wilson, a big problem of his actually in college was that he would, stay looking and wouldn't always take the checkdowns when they were there. But I think, Jameson Williams can help maximize that, urgency, that eagerness to make those deep passes because he's so good at manipulating blind spots. And once he gears up and explodes, he's gone. Very hard to catch up to him. So I think Williams would help maximize that deep element that Zach Wilson has always wanted to maximize in his own realm. But at the same time, you have a guy like Jameson Williams, his sheer presence we saw in that Georgia game in the national championship, before and after he was gone with that injury, before the Georgia defense really had to account for him every play. And once he was gone, you don't have that deep threat stretching the field and really straining that defense. And they can, hone in on some of the other threats and really suffocate that offense. So I think Jameson Williams, the sheer presence when he is healthy, can really stretch the field, spread it out for guys like Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, CJ Uzama. It can really open up this offense and free up a lot of other guys. And at the same time, he's a playmaker in his own right with that game-breaking speed. So I love the impact that his presence can have and that he can have as a playmaker.
I mean, the thing with Jameson Williams, if it was before the ACL injury, there's a case could have made. He would have been the number 1 receiver off the board this year. Like, he was that incredible at Alabama. Like we talked about before several different times, you're not drafting the player they are right now. You're going after the one they will be. And if Jameson Williams is able to slip out of the first round and the Jets are sitting there on the clock, I am running to that podium. I'm knocking Roger Goodell out of the way to announce this pick. Like, the first 3 picks here, Thibodeau, Hamilton, and Williams, that is a franchise resetting first 3 picks.
That's
and
an
to pair them alongside with like a Corey Davis and Elijah Moore, who could be that phenomenal next slot receiver in the NFL, coming out of what became a little bit of a powerhouse in terms of receivers, coming out of LSU that already produced, DK Metcalf and AJ Brown. Like, Moore alongside Jameson Williams, you've got the speed, you've got the short, and then you have Corey Davis outside on the other side too, as a more possession kind of style XZ style receiver. You've got a phenomenal pairing. And at that point, like Zach Wilson, if he just matures at what we expect him to do, you've got an incredible grouping sitting here right here for him. But honestly, look, the Jets also have another pick here in the second round. And at this point, they're addressing one of their other needs 3 picks later. And this is going to be a cornerback with Roger Mccreary out of Auburn. Now, coming in here, do you see him being that guy who could end up taking on a team's number 1? Or is he a guy you're going to use more in rotation, maybe more like the nickel? Or do you actually like him also outside on the perimeter, maybe taking on like the number 2 for these teams?
Yeah, it's an interesting fit for him. And I think with the Jets, obviously Bryce Hall, a young corner who showed his flashes last year, took his lumps too, but, trending up, he wasn't fully healthy to start his career. So it was good to see him play the way he did last year. Signing DJ Reed as well from the Seahawks, that's another upgrade to their boundary. I think in that group, Roger Mccreary is pretty interesting because his arm length has been a big topic of discussion. I think under 30-inch arms, in the lower percentile for arm length. And, at the same time, it's another thing where you need to find balance for it, kind of like Kyle Hamilton's 40 time, where we don't want to over exaggerate. We're not going to say that Roger Mccreary can't play because of his arm length. And I think on tape, there's a lot of good examples of him, compensating for that with, stingy coverage. Again, very fluid, very explosive on tape, closes ground quickly, and is really just a gnat. He's always in your face, and you can't get away from him like that. But at the same time, I can't rule out the fact that, let's say there's a jump ball and the receiver has 32-inch arms and you have 29-inch arms. Maybe those 3 inches is all he needs to make that catch and get you out of the picture if you're Roger Mccreary. So I can't discount the impact that it might have, but I do think with Mccreary, especially, with his skill set, I think it's translatable in a lot of different areas of the field. And thinking back to you having Kyle Hamilton, if you're in a too high look, put Mccreary in the slot. I think he's very physical, very tenacious, and again, has the fluidity to match guys. You can put him there, and then you have a very, I think the root of it is versatility, projected versatility, and what you can do with these guys. And with Mccreary, his high football intelligence, the physicality, and the athleticism, the short area athleticism to match guys. For me, that's enough. It's enough there where I can say I can move him around boundary, slot, just really be flexible on defense. And I think these pieces allow you to do that.
Flexibility is key here. And let's take a look at the rest of the New York Jets draft here. After the Roger Mccreary pick, they go with a tight end and Isaiah Likely out of Coastal Carolina. And then once you get to round number 4, you go with the running back with Zamir White. Then you go linebacker at pick 116 with Malcolm Rodriguez. And then they double dip. They add another running back in round number 5 with Damian Pierce out of Florida. An interesting pickup and prospect for them. And then round 5, their final pick of the 2022 NFL Draft, they address defensive tackle, add a depth piece there with Jordan Jackson out of Air Force here for the New York Jets. So if you are a Jets fan and you're watching this, what do you think of the mock draft that was selected down below at Pro Football Network? And if you also want to run a mock draft, be sure to check out profootballnetwork.com/mock draft.